Hello, I am Víctor Paredes. I am the product manager of Moho, and I want to show you in this tutorial how the new quad meshes work and how they are different to the old triangle meshes. So first I want to start showing you the Moho box here, Moho 13.5 box, and I am using three different kind of meshes, so I want to show you the differences. So the first box here, if I hide it, it's using a triangle mesh. So you can see this mesh is made by two triangles. So now if I use this one to distort my image, you can see it's working. But if I want to get something more similar to perspective, it's very hard to get with this kind of mesh because of the distortion of the triangles. So you can see it looks more like a like folding paper rather than creating some kind of perspective. So in the second image I have the new true perspective quad mesh, and if I try this one, you can see that the image is moving by perspective. And if I just show the mesh is simply a quad. It has only 4 points and that's all. And you can see it is true perspective, and that means that things that are farther away from the camera become smaller, and things that are closer to the camera become bigger. So this is the first mode of the new quad perspective. So the only thing you need to realize, or you need to take in consideration with this perspective, is that if you move the points and they get to a point where it is not a valid perspective, then the image will disappear and the perspective won't work anymore, because this is not really a valid perspective. So that's the only thing you need to consider when using this. And if I compare this one, for instance, this distortion here, with the other perspective, with the other quad, you can see the difference is very evident. And finally we have the third mode, and I will show you how to use this mode, so don't worry, this is just the introduction. But finally we have the third mode, and this is the distortion quad mesh, and it works very similar to the perspective. It distorts the image, but this time it doesn't make the objects to become smaller by the perspective, so it works more like a distortion cage, which is very nice if you want to simulate some 3D rotation, for instance, for a box or a door or anything that you need to simulate perspective with. And the only thing that makes different the perspective quad mesh from the distortion quad mesh is that in order to work the perspective quad mesh, it needs to be a single quad, and it needs to be disconnected from any other quad. So it needs to be isolated. You can actually have several, but they need to be disconnected from each other. So as far as you have that, like the isolated quad, it will work in perspective. Now if we go to the other example here, this is actually two faces of a box, and they are connected, as you can see here. So we have the face 1 and the face 2, the front and the side, and they are connected. So when they are connected, the software assumes that you want to have a distortion quad mesh. So that is the only difference. And you can even have in the same layer, you can have distortion quad meshes and perspective quad meshes, and even triangles. You can blend all them in one layer. So now let me show you how the distortion quad mesh works. For that, let me just create a new file, and I will import this head here. Okay, so this is the box, the fox from the box, and now I will create a new vector layer, and I will call it mesh. Okay, so now to create a mesh, we need to use the add point tool, or basically we need to create vectors. So I'm using the add point tool, and I will zoom in here. I'm using right click to move the canvas, and shift and right click dragging left or right to zoom. And now I will start building this mesh. Now, you need to consider this. A mesh can have shapes with 3 points, triangles, with 4 points, quads, and that's it. You can't have shapes with 5 or 6 points or anything over that. It only works with 3 or 4 points. So we are going to start building this mesh here. So first I'm going to create an overall shape. I'm just dragging here from one point to the other. So I drag here, and now I go back to this point and drag again, drag again, drag again, and so on. So I'm just creating an overall envelope for the shape. And now to close, to connect the last and the first point, I will press enter, and now they are connected. Okay, so I just made an envelope for this. And now I will start creating the actual mesh. But in order to do that, I need to consider the actual shape of this head. And it doesn't matter if you are animating a character or a prop or any other object. You need to consider what is the real shape. So for instance, here we are going to consider the eyebrows. So I'm going to follow the line of the eyebrows to create my mesh. So I will create a point here, and then I will follow the eyebrows here, and then here, and then I will connect with the other side with enter. And now I will do the same with the eyes. So here, and I will try to use the same amount of points and in similar positions than I used in the eyebrows, and all the points need to be connected. So there. Okay, and now since I need to have quads, I will start connecting these points here and here. I'm pressing enter to connect them. So you can see all this part of the eyebrows and the eyes is connected, and they are connected by forming quads. Okay, and now I will continue with the mouth. So I will take some lines here, and maybe I will connect this one here and here and here. Sorry, I will use the translate point tool here to move a point I didn't connect it properly. And now I will continue connecting this one. Oops, this one here, here, and here. And now I will take this here. So you can see I'm using quads and triangles. So here you can see I have a triangle for this shape and for this shape. And now I will connect this one here and this one here. Okay, and if at any moment you have a curve in your mesh, simply press Ctrl A or Command A, and then Ctrl or Command P, and that will create peak corners for every point, because the meshes, they need to have peak corners. So you can also select all use the menu, select all, and then go to draw and select peak here. It's the same than using the shortcuts. Okay, so I will continue building my mesh here. So I will connect this. So I'm just creating triangles and quads. Okay, and now I will continue with this part. So you see I'm trying to repeat the same amount of points and then connecting here, and I am connecting everything by pressing enter. So I'm using the add point tool. The shortcut is A. Then if you want to move any point, the shortcut is T for the translate point tool. And then I will continue. Okay, so let's suppose now I want to connect this here and this here and maybe here. Now I need to start to think about how to connect different shapes. Okay, so maybe this one will come here, and maybe there will be another one coming here, 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 here. So I'm just trying to follow the shape of the character, that's all. So you will have to think about that and to think what is the best way to follow this shape, and always keeping in mind that the shapes need to be 3 or 4 points. So there, and now I will connect this. I will select all and press Ctrl P there, and there, and I think, let's suppose I am done now. This is what I want. So I have a shape with quads and triangles. So now once I am done, I could use the paint bucket tool to paint every single one of the shapes. So to use the paint bucket tool, you just need to select it, and then you hold the mouse over what you want to paint, and the software will offer you what to paint. So once you are sure about what you want to paint, you release and it will be painted. So you can do that, or you can simply click also, that also works. But I will undo this because there are too many quads here and I am very lazy, so I want the computer to do it for me. So I will go to scripts, and this is a script that one of the beta users donated to the software, so thank you very much again for that. You can go to scripts, draw, and fill quad mesh. And this script automatically fills the entire quad mesh, so you don't need to worry about the paint bucket or anything. Now I will move this mesh under the head, just because I don't want the vectors to cover the head. And now I will select the head layer here, double click it, now go to the image tab and go to the smart warp layer section here and select mesh. I press OK, and now that mesh is assigned to the image layer. So now if I go to any frame different than 0, everything we were doing here was on frame 0, because we were rigging the character, we were building the character. Now if we want to animate the character, we need to be in any other frame different than 0. So for instance, I will go to frame 24 here, and now I can select the mesh layer, and I can use the translate point tool, and you can see if I move the points, now the object is being distorted, in this case the character. And also I will remove this keyframe I just created, and I can also use the magnet tool here. And the magnet tool works this way: you press Alt or Option, hold it and drag left or right to make it bigger or smaller. And with the magnet tool I can move several points at the same time. So it's very useful for the meshes, because I can create some nice distortions very quickly. So I know for this tutorial it won't be so pretty, but let's suppose I want something like this. Okay, so now I have some kind of head turn happening here. And now if I want to animate some specific points, I can go to the transform point tool, and there are several points selected here. So if I want to move only one, I can press escape to unselect the points, and now I can move the points one by one. Okay, so now we have this animation happening here. Now the mesh here is visible, but I can hide it because I don't need to see it, so I can hide it and continue animating here. Okay, so now we created a very simple mesh for this one. You can create more complex meshes according to your character. Personally, I recommend you to look for the balance of a mesh. Like if you have too many points on a mesh, maybe you can control a lot of details of the character, but that also means that during the animation you will have to animate a lot of points, and that's not always ideal. So there is always a balance between how many points you put in a mesh and how much control you really need, or how much easy the animation is. So in this case I will add a couple more things to my mesh. So I will go back to frame 0, I will just remove the animation I created here, And now I will select the select shape tool here, and now I will press select all to select all the shapes, and now I will press delete in my keyboard to delete them. And I want to add some more points. So for instance, I want to separate the eyes from the eyebrows because I want to move them separated. So I will just create a new line here to separate the eyebrows. I'm pressing enter to weld the points, and now I also separate the eyes from here. So I will leave just a little quad here, a couple little quads, just to move some kind of this part like the eyelid. So I'm making this separation so it will allow me to distort my character without moving parts that I don't want to move. So I will do the same with the part under this. So I'm just separating, basically I'm separating the eyes from the rest of the body or the rest of the head, and I will do the same with the with this part of the nose. So you can see I'm creating triangles here too. So I'm simply separating this part, and actually I will separate also this part here, because what I want here is that if I move the eye, I don't want to move the rest of the body here at the side. So that's why I'm creating some extra quads and extra meshes there. So if I move the eyebrows or the eyes, that movement won't distort the rest of the mesh. Okay, and finally I will just add a point here because I want to show you something. Okay, so let's suppose this is the mesh I want to create now. I will hide my image just to show you only the mesh, and we'll go back to script, draw, and fill quad mesh. So now the script tries to fill it, but now I have a new mesh, new message. Mesh inconsistencies found. Please check the selected points and shapes. And basically this script not only fills every shape that you created, but also tells you if there is any shape that is not valid for a mesh. So in this case, since I added this extra point, the script noticed that, okay, I can't paint a shape with 5 points because that's not valid. So I will press OK, and now I can simply remove this point, or I could connect it to other points to complete the mesh, but in this case I will just remove it. So now I can run the script again, and everything is working fine now. So now I can show my character here. I can go to any frame different to frame 0. I will go to frame 24 in this case, and now I can move the mesh. And here is what I wanted for the separation. So I can select with the select point tools here in G, and I like to have the lasso mode activated here. I can select, for instance, only the eyebrow, and then with the transform point tool I can move the eyebrow, and you can see how the eyebrow is moving, but it's not distorting the eye because I put those extra quads there. And the same for the eye. I can start creating some kind of blink, let's suppose here, and now you can see the blink is really not distorting anything else. So let me move the eyebrows down now if this character is blinking. So we have that kind of distortion now. So that's why I wanted to have some control over this, and why I wanted to have some extra quads there. Now of course, if you want to hide this layer because you don't want to render this white mesh, you can simply turn it off here, or you can also open the layer properties of the mesh and select hide in editing view. So if I press that, I will make it invisible, And actually, if I open the layer properties again, you can see that automatically this layer is set to don't render this layer. So that means that even in the final render, this layer won't be visible, because this layer is only distorting the rest of the layers. So quad meshes are very powerful, and I have shown you how to use them in images, but they also work in vector layers. So let me show you an example of a vector layer here. I have it here. If you give me 1 second. So here we have this character, and this character is entirely made by vectors. But also, if I filter here, I will just search for mesh here. I have a mesh layer here. So this mesh layer is very similar to the one we just created, but the difference is this mesh layer is actually moving vectors instead of bitmaps. That means that the shape that I am distorting will be always softer, because the vectors, this mesh is not moving pixels, it's moving the position of the vectors. So the curve between the position of the vectors will still be very soft, even with this distortion. So it's very different to work with vectors than with images. I mean, the way you create the mesh is the same, but the way the mesh behaves is different. And another nice thing is that if you select the head layer here, let me just Alt and right click to select this layer here. I can even draw over this layer, so I will use the freehand tool. And let's suppose I want to paint a mustache here, there, and maybe here, and maybe I want a couple lines here, and that's it. So now I just added that, and since all the animation is made with the mesh, those lines are still following the mesh, so I don't need to animate anything again, because those points are following the same mesh. So it's very powerful, and you can just go back and change some things in your design, and you are not losing any of the animation you made, even if it made it uglier, like in this example. So that's it. That's how you assign. And if you want to assign a mesh to a vector layer, you just select the vector layer, double click, and instead of going to images, you go to vectors here, to the vector tab, and then here you select a smart warp layer, and everything else works the same. So basically that in Moho 12 and before we had in Moho 12 we have triangles for meshes, but now we have perspective and we have distortion quads. So everything works much smoother now, and the results are so much better. I really like it. Well, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you liked this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching.